Right, it's 7 minutes past 9. We are talking football with Anthony Moyles. Obviously, the Rory Gallagher situation is ongoing at the moment. He had stepped aside before the game. It has yet to emerge how long he has stepped aside for. We'll find that out in the coming days. There's not much that we can say about the situation at the moment from a legal perspective. But I think people will have seen Nicola Gallagher's Facebook post, and they'll have seen her interview, hopefully, in the Irish Sunday Independent yesterday. And I'd urge you to read both of those, and also you can read Rory Gallagher's statement as well. So we're not going to talk too much about it, right? Just because we can't. But in terms of Derry's performance and their ability to shut out noise, maybe this victory means more than just the trophy coming down the road, or maybe it doesn't matter. I'm not sure. I'm kind of struggling to make sense of what the performance on the pitch means for them yesterday.
Yeah, it's there's no doubt about it. It was a difficult week for them, obviously, preparation-wise. It was a curveball that I'm sure they weren't expecting. There's a lot done, you know. They're a very focused team. They're a very diligent team. They're a very disciplined team. So they're a team that are well groomed and well versed in how they play. So, you know, there's not a whole pile. The week of a game such as this, you're literally just making sure that everyone's in the right frame of mind. So, yes, okay. So, does this cause things to go completely off kilter? Can it be very detrimental to the mindset? Can it be very detrimental to people? I think Gallagher would have obviously gone and he would have addressed the players and he would have said, listen, this is something that I need to do. It is a decision that I need to make, probably to protect not only his children, as he said in the statement, but also to protect you as players and to protect the group. So for that fact, you know, I'm going to step aside for this game. And it would have been handled in that vein, I would imagine. I think the players would have been professional enough to say, right, well, we're the fellas on the pitch. And that is it at the end of the day, Jerry. You know, as soon as you cross the white line, they're out there. You even hear, I've forgotten the man's name now, but the manager who stood in for him. Kieran Meena. You know, and he said, I couldn't even get an instruction onto the field. Such was the vigour and the noise and the clamour and the intensity of the game. And really you are, like, I mean, you know, I know, you know, the famous Jim Gavin thing of, well, if you're shouting in at players during a match, you know, you haven't told them what to do pre-game and they're not really ready. So I think when you go up the levels and you're playing at that type of level, they know where they are. You're empowering the players and you're trusting the players on the field. And although, and of course it would have had an effect, I think they would have been focused in on the job and what they needed to do, really.
Let's talk about Armagh for a minute then before we come back to the individual performances on Derry in particular. A second penalty shootout defeat is the type of thing that can get in on a side. You know, you start thinking about the England and other teams who have lost. Atletico Madrid. Do they care? Can they recover from this? Is it like, lads, don't be worried about this. You know, people had Derry in their top three for a large part of the season. And they're going to cause endless difficulties to anybody now. It seems they have matured from last season and they're better from an attacking perspective. So this doesn't matter. We go again. It's an All-Ireland series. That's all that matters.
It's hard to know. And we've spoken about this all year with regard to Armagh. I think Armagh cut the cloth sometimes to suit who they're playing. Okay, I think they do an awful lot of focus on the opposition, which is good, which is a good thing. You know, like, I mean, a lot of players will say, oh, well, it doesn't matter, we only focus on ourselves. And again, at that level, you have to, of course, take the opposite. But I think they really drill down into trying to get their matchups correct and even their style of play and tinkering with things. And we've spoken about how sometimes they were nearly played with abandonment, kicking long balls into their full forward line. Very exciting style of football. And they probably said last year, well, you know, it didn't get us to where we wanted to be. Well, being more conservative than they, I don't think they're ultra conservative, but certainly being more conservative than they were hasn't necessarily got them to where they want to be as well. So I still think they have to find that balance. It's a very difficult thing to do, playing Derry, in the sense of if you give them the ball and if you are not set up unbelievably disciplined in your defensive setup, they will pick holes. And what they'll do is they'll drag you left and right. And we've looked at all the various different ways that Derry can open you. You know, they force one side and they switch it to the far side, or they create lots of space, or they crowd the full forward line. So we know all the different things. But the main thing is it's an unbelievably disciplined and focused defensive display that you have to try to eradicate and stop Derry's scores. They were very successful at that. They had moments in that game, Ger, where they could have I think they had the foot on the neck of Derry, and they just didn't kill them.
Taking the point instead of the goal, a few wides, particularly.
Just, you know, the very first, I counted, it was 47 passes in the first 3.5 minutes. 47 passes. I think one kick pass, 46. One kick pass, one sideline, and 45 hand passes in the first 3.5 minutes. First 3.5 minutes of the game, which kind of set the tone for the first half. Now it was hard to detect, but there was a big breeze there in that first half.
You can see one of the in the first half. There's a ball that looks like it's going well wide of the left, and at the last second the wind takes it.
And I think McGuigan takes a free as well, and it kind of drops short. You could just see that the breeze that was against. So I just felt that again their conservatism cost them in the end. Now there's a very thin line between what you need to do there to be disciplined and to be set, and then throwing the shackles off a little bit, you know, and you can get caught between two stools. But definitely the Charlie O'Byrne, the opportunity he had at the end, again, that's nearly a mindset. It's kind of, we're in this bit, take the point, whereas goal is on, you know.
Ryan O'Toole on it and just head down and go for it.
Yeah, and probably, you know, at that stage you're saying, because at the end of the day, you're into the All-Ireland series, right? You do have the backstop. Now, you can't go into the game as well with that kind of mindset and just say, of course you want an Ulster final. But I just felt at the margins.
In extra time goes, sure, this doesn't matter. We're going to, you know, like, obviously both sides can do that, and then...
Yeah. And again, I thought they had the foot in the throat of Derry in extra. Like, Derry looked like Rocky-esque. Like, they were literally out. They were gone. It was like one more punch, boom, and they were down. And they just gave them a sniff. And to be fair to Derry, they took it. And I thought there was only one side really winning the penalties. You know, I didn't feel. I just thought, well, Derry are going to take this. You know,
Armagh have Galway, Tyrone, and Westmeath in their group.
Not easy.
Jesus.
Well, it's hard to know what the story is with Westmeath. Like we thought that they were going to use last year's Tailteann Cup to springboard, to get up to Division 2, to guarantee themselves Sam Maguire for, you know, or get as close as possible. But then they just haven't performed at the level that we thought they would.
Armagh will have Westmeath at home first, I think, as well. So at least you get that game out of the way. Maybe get a win.
Once that happens, they've qualified.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah, they need. Well, it's sorry, without disrespecting Westmeath, because I'm sure Westmeath are waiting in the wings for them. It's the best of the three, shall we say, outcomes that they possibly could have, because they have it at home and they can get back up on the horse and go again. But that's not an easy group.
It's not an easy group. They will like the shot at Galway again. Like if you're McGeeney that week, it's not hard to get them up. You know.
No, and I think, again, they did an awful lot of things right, Ger. Like, they did a massive amount of things right. And, you know, there is the difference. You know, you lose, you go home, and you're thinking on the bus, or you're thinking that night, you're lying in bed, you can't sleep, and you're thinking, geez, if only I gave that pass, if only I did it, if only I fisted the ball, if only I took the shot, if only we caught that ball. It's those margins. And, of course, when you win, you're thinking, you don't think about those things. You're thinking, well, we're great lads. You know, we've done everything right. Yeah. So it's small, tiny little, because for a lot of the game, I thought they and people would say, well, it was a tactically really astute game. I thought Joe Kernan was interesting the other day with Conleth Gilligan on the show. And the last question was asked, and he referred to the conservatism and taking the shackles off the Armagh team. Now, that could be the same as in Meath, like, will they not just kick the ball in? You know, like, things have changed. But I think there's definitely a feeling, and but you get the sense that whether it be outside or inside the camp, there's probably a feeling that there could be a little bit more. Like, and I mean from a forward, you know, and a kind of as I say, just kind of being a little bit more flair.
Well, I think 318 of their scores in the championship so had come from halfbacks. Like a lot of their scores, their forward line don't do a hell of a lot of scoring compared to some other teams. But as you say, it's down to little moments. Like I think Kieran Mackin tried to track Brendan Rodgers for a bit, and that's not an easy job to do for anyone. Rodgers was brilliant, but the goal, like Rodgers' goal, and that was the kind of the thing that kept the gap between the two teams for most of the game. I don't know where Ethan Rafferty was going.
Yeah,
like he was a no man's land.
Just not a keeper, like.
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem again. So that decision. But look, what he gives you, of course, he kicks some unbelievable scores. He kicks a brilliant score near the end, which is, I think, maybe puts them 1 or 2 up, whatever it was. So we've spoken about this before. What he gives you, I think, far outweighs what you potentially lose. But of course, when it comes to the crunch, and it's Murphy's Law, he ends up doing a job at the end, which is a very goalkeeper reliant job, i.e., save penalties, and that is an art, and that is a skill, and
maybe
that is something
some
that's
keeper who's going to be, you know, like, and it's no knock on you, mate, but like this guy has a lifetime of doing this, and
that's good thinking,
you know,
and I think that's the next evolution, actually, you know, potentially, because if you were ticking all the boxes, if you were getting right down to the granular, that's probably where you are. And you know, the goal, yes, he goes to come, he realises I'm not getting there, and when he should have made that decision a lot quicker. But it's you know, I thought they were a bit toothless up front. Turbot had a poor outing. Murnan, you know, now that, I tell you what, McAvoy, people talk about Rodgers and they talk about Chrissy McCaig. But he looks about 12, first of all. I was kind of saying, but he had an unbelievable game because Murnan was all like the week what they did against Down, which was those crossfield balls, and they really put balls in on top of the square to cause panic. Wasn't even considered because of the power that they have back there. Lynch in goal, of course, but McAvoy I thought was really, really good. They have a great full back line. Look, Derry will be happy. I don't think Derry were at their full tilt. I really don't. I thought as well maybe the week hampered them a little bit, but I didn't feel they had that same amount of energy. I thought they were a little bit off. I thought Glass was, even though he came into it right at the end, I thought he was quiet for a lot of the game. But look, Armagh will dust themselves down. I thought McGeeney spoke well after the game. I think he was interviewed by Ashton. I think he spoke well, where he just said, and he's that type of fella, McGeeney. You know, he it hurts him.
Very even-tempered.
Correct. Doesn't necessarily show it. Will be absolutely hurt inside, no doubt about it. But I think he will get them to a point where he can use it as fuel for the next day.
You'd imagine so. Like the kind of last performance as well, he probably wasn't being utilised to his best degree, but then at the end he comes up and he scores. We were mentioning it earlier, the penalty was ridiculous, but
Glass is only 25, McGuigan's only 25. This Derry team aren't going away anywhere, you know.
No,
I would have said Glass is much older, but
no, he's not going away. But the catch before that, you know, when he goes up in midfield at a really vital time for the kick out, and he goes up and plucks it, and even just driving on, like McGuigan last year, if you remember, he got injured, he was targeted a lot. He was showing his ability, but this has just been, like, I mean, he was everywhere. He was back in the full back line, picking up balls. He came out around midfield. You know, his point scoring and the backing of himself is just fantastic.
Did the better team win on the day?
You know, again, I think it was just such an arm wrestle that, you know, you weren't saying one really blasted the other one out of the way. I thought Derry were a little bit off, and I thought Armagh, if they had Armagh
were very inefficient.
Yeah, shooting efficiency, Derry were much more.
Really inefficient. And here's the thing, if they shoot, you know, an extra 15-20%, then it's a 5-6 point win. Like, oh, that was brilliant. But you can't trust them not to miss those.
But I think also their selections at the start, you know, I think they went conservative, Ger. You know, they didn't start with their full complement of what you would have thought of. These are our scoring forwards. So again, you know, a half-back gets those shots or gets into those positions where he's not normally accustomed to, and he either dishes it off or has a go, whereas a forward would say, and I just thought, it felt to me that they said, right, what we'll do is we'll contain them and then try and hit them, and it just didn't get there for them.
Let's move on to the Dubs. So they're still shuffling their deck. Still not entirely sure exactly what their best starting 15 is, but they do have strength and depth, and I think there's no issue with Jack McCaffrey. Or at least certainly Desi was playing it down afterwards, comes off early enough, and they said it's just a minor injury, so presumably he'll be back at full tilt. He is a game changer for them. You see the difference between him and Mannion being in the team, and Con in the team fully fit. But can we read anything into this? Louth were, you know, very intense, 15-20 minutes, and then it's game over.
Yeah, I'd say McCaffrey twings a hammer. That'd be my guess, my amateur guess. Just look, but even though he still kicked the point when it was, because he was like, "Oh, I'm out of here," straight away after it. I thought Louth, they brought a lot to it at the start. I thought they were hanging on just purely because of Dublin's intensity. Even the scores that Louth got in the first kind of 10, 15 minutes, a couple of the frees, the tackling was borderline whether it could have been a free or not. Dublin were hunting in packs. They were very, very tight. They had a sweeper in place.
They had a 5-on-1 for the goal they scored, the first goal they scored.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that came from, they Louth actually won the kick out, but then slipped it up, and men had gone beyond. I can't remember who had it, the 6. Men had gone beyond, and then there was a little hand pass and it got intercepted and it was goal on. It's kind of crazy. I'm looking at it. They conceded 110 in that spell, Louth. Which is probably a 10-minute spell. Like, that's it, game over.
We've seen Dublin do this before against really, really, really top teams.
Absolutely.
Did it to Mayo, did it to Tyrone. So maybe they're back. I don't know.
Well, there's two things. One, and this is a kind of a broader conversation. I know Mickey Hart had said, "Oh well, anyone who looks them back in camera, they're great lads and they're all very smart," and he's right. But I think at those times, I sometimes feel if you're in that situation, if you lost 2 or 3 out in a row, right? Does the keeper just say, "Listen, we're putting as many bodies right literally on the centre circle," kind of type of thing. We're just going to put it, and we're just going to make it an unbelievable battle out there. And if we lose it, we just all run back as quick as possible. Yeah. Because when you're trying to still do intricate kickouts, when you're under that much pressure and you're pinging them out here and you're pinging a couple over the sideline, you're just heaping more and more. Now, I'm not saying that works, but generally you just make it purely a 50-50.
There's bits in the game where you get the yips, and they're going to happen to everybody. The world's best golfers, the world's best snooker players, everybody's got a little bit of the yips. And so for the 10 minutes, while I'm working through my yips as a team, we're going to do something different.
And what Kildare did well against Dublin was, and you could see Louth doing it as well, because they were flooding that middle channel. They were saying, right, no goals. But what Kildare did was, sometimes when they won the ball back, instead of going full on, let's get up the far end and get a score, they actually just controlled it a bit. So they gave themselves a bit of a breather. Because when you're bringing that level of intensity, right, and you're trying to stop them from a defensive point of view, and this is something that, say, Derry have got right against Dublin. When they win the ball back, they ultimately they go from 5th gear down into 2nd gear, and they just say, right, calm, and we'll just go through and we may hold it for 3 minutes. But what it does is it takes the sting out of the game, because what often teams do is, we've got it back, now we have to attack straight away with speed and intensity, and you go up the far end, and even if you get the score, Cluxton has you pinged already and the ball's gone, you're pushed up the field, and next thing they get a goal, and you're like, ow, what just happened there? So look, they're definitely back. I think the rotation that he was doing, he's now back to his main men again. Who came in? Your Scully, McCaffrey, Howard, your main boys were back.
Costello started.
Kilkenny was back in. You've got your shall we say your power players back in, and they're doing what they should do, and they're doing it very, very well. They're, as I said, their level of intensity, their level of tackling, their turnovers, their cornerbacks did what they did brilliantly against Louth, which was they brought Mulroy.
Still not signing Michael Fitzsimons.
No, he's not there, and he's I believe he's back playing with Kula, but he hasn't been drafted in for whatever was gone on there. But listen, they got it right. They brought Mulroy.
He was doing I think he might have been doing medical exams possibly. Fitzsimons.
Okay, well that could have, yeah. But they're smart. They brought the main threat of Louth right into their full back line. So they ended up bringing Mulroy and Downey and these guys. They brought them
scored
very
10 points.
I did.
I scored 10 points. That's the final. How'd you do?
Yeah.
It's really tough for him, because he's a fantastic footballer and he's back fully fit, and hopefully they're able to do some business in the group stages.
Is it the dying embers of the Leinster Championship? Okay, 13 in a row. I saw the really interesting comment from Desi Farrell afterwards. He says, I think it's probably time to have a proper review of the competition, see who does this benefit, these big wins, the big discrepancies between teams.
I don't think we know how Dublin voted when it came to Proposal B.
Yeah,
well, sure. I don't think
that goes down to that whole transparency thing.
They didn't lobby for that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
all the provincials, and people would say, well, the Ulster, it was well. If you're relying on 1 out of 4,
it doesn't. It also doesn't matter anymore that it's linked to the it doesn't matter. So.
Well, I thought what was really interesting, someone made a comment, I think it was McGuigan, who basically said in the interview, well, we've looked at this as great preparation for the All-Ireland series. That's what the provincials have become.
That's heresy. Right, Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. It's Anthony Moyles giving us his thoughts on the weekend's Gaelic football.